We are calling this meeting to order, the Parks and Recreation Commission of July 2022. And we would need a motion for approval of minutes.
I'll move to, it is on. I'll move approval of the minutes with some changes, and I'll note that Scott asked that the changes be in the meeting this time so that all the revisions could be at once. So that's my motion. I proceed with the changes then, so that whoever wants to second knows what they're seconding. Okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Revisions to the draft minutes of June 2. In 5B, which is the Oregon Food Pantry proposal, there are two words I would like added so that we were clear on what we were approving. The final line says, Patrick Cheney moved to approve the use of said shelters with a fee waiver. I would like that to say, move to approve the use of said shelters with permits and a fee waiver. Okay.
Yes.
Next, let's see, then go to 5, okay, just for opportunity for anybody else, in 5C was the Terrace Gardens. Our comments are in there, my comments are, I sent them to Scott, and then we sort of have brief listing of other comments, so if anybody wants their, whatever their comments were elaborated or added to or anything like this, I'll just note that the council, let's see now, I believe from what I saw, Board of Public Works kind of passed on it. Somebody else, I think RCC may have passed on it. Tree Advisory denied it, and the council also just threw it back to the staff to work on it between now and December, so this will probably be around again. So any comments might be useful for the staff. I'll just go on here. In 5D, I did ask in the meeting, down at the bottom, just before the move to approval, I asked that a line be added that shows the math the other way around also, in additional to what it says right there. The line should say $3,500 plus $7,000 equals $10,500 for this well and drinking fountain item.
Okay.
That's to give credit to the FDPA for the money that is in total that's being contributed just for this particular item. Of course, there was other money that was being provided by FDPA for other things in the dog park. And then in 7C, which is R4522 final hub design update, Scott had mentioned in the meeting that he needed to correct that, so the draft minutes still have it the original way, but it needs to be corrected. What I would suggest that it say, if you want to just follow along that sentence, I think it should say the council did not approve the same proposal that the Park Commission and H&I Committee recommended, and then add a short line, council removed the roof from the open building. And that's correct, right, Julia? Yeah. Okay. And I believe that is all.
Okay. Does anyone else have any revisions to the minutes they'd like to offer? All right. If not, then we need a second for the corrections that were just offered by Patrick.
I'll second.
Very good. Thank you. All those in favor of the minutes as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 3, public appearances for non-agenda items. Do we have anybody visiting today?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, review and approve agenda for tonight's meeting. A motion to approve, please.
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
A second?
Second. I'll second.
Okay. So, all those in favor of the agenda as written?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
No any opposed? That will carry also. So 5A action item is Stoner Prairie Park planning update, and Scott will get us started.
Thank you, Sue. Maybe as a brief little summary of what we've done and where we're at, and Rob Stein is here from EOR to run us through the current draft of the plan. As you recall, there was a neighborhood survey that was put together. And from that survey, Mr. Stein and EOR put together two concept plans, which the Park Commission did review last month. And what Rob did is he did review that meeting, so we were able to get all the concept or all the questions included in the original presentation. And then Rob has worked on a revised concept plan. We're kind of narrowing down to one concept plan. So Rob will run through the concept plan. I know Sue did provide some questions along the way, which I did share with the Park Commission, and Rob is certainly prepared to answer all of those questions. And then at the end of tonight's meeting, the hope is that we have a final kind of conceptual design that we can then take out to the community and the neighbors to gather their feedback and comments for final design. And then at that point, we would take it to the Common Council. I will note that, Mr. Stein's commitment per the contract, we're nearing the final lap of that commitment of the contract. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to come up with that final concept from comments from the Park Commission. So I think with that, if there isn't any questions, I'll pass it off to Mr. Stein, and then he can kind of review the concept plan that we currently have.
Thank you, Scott. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Seems like it's a mandatory check in Zoom meetings these days. So thanks to the commission for the time and the opportunity to come and present this to you. Like Scott had mentioned, I did review the last meeting, and all the feedback that Sue you provided, I appreciate those comments, and those are taken to heart. And I hope that we can address those comments tonight. As we go through tonight, am I able to share my screen? I have just a couple. If not, we can work off of what we have. I don't have much different than what we have. But, can everyone see my screen okay? Yes, as I was saying, I reviewed that meeting and then met with Scott and talked through things, and I appreciate all that feedback. And what I've done today is, over the last few weeks, is revise the plan to hopefully address a lot of that. And hopefully through the process here tonight, we can, make some tweaks to the plan, identify some things. I have a couple of pointed questions for the commission that hopefully we can come some consensus on, so that we can work towards a finalized vision of the plan. And with that, I think we'll just kind of start walking through it. The identified site here, you're all familiar with. So before you is kind of a revised plan. And as I go through here, I will try to address reasons for doing things. It was clear to me, and based off comments from the commission last time, is that the southern portion of this site is desired to be largely left alone. There was interest in supporting the communities there to use that for ultimate frisbee. The existing ball field does get some use, is my understanding. We removed any trail connecting the southern portion. A point to that, the reason that was put in there is based off of that survey, is that there was one of the most consensus agreed upon things in the survey was the desire for walking trails and paths. But what that does do is it divides that that kind of shared space between the school and the Stoner Prairie Park area. So we removed that. We remain the connection up here. And then let's go right to left here. One of the areas of discussion for tonight that I'd like input in is this area over here. There's currently an existing playground. It's a little dated, but functional nonetheless. With discussions with Scott, it's proposed that that's remain at this point, being that it's not any safety concern. It does provide that kind of toddler play, that 2 to 5 year old play. At this point, leaving that. There was also a strong desire for larger naturalized area, whether that's native planting areas or more focused pollinator gardens. I would like a little more feedback on that. And then Sue had concerns about this crossing here into the school. More precisely, having kids crossing at non-crosswalk areas. So I want to talk a little bit about that, but one thing that I have done is shown is kind of improved or an added naturalized area that doesn't cut off the park, the play equipment there from the neighborhood. It doesn't completely block it. Right now, I show kind of a vegetative buffer, but again, I would like to get into discussion on that later. And then moving into the site, the commission had comments about kind of maximizing the area of native spaces without dividing it up much, to reduce on maintenance, and those edge zones of improved native areas are kind of the gateway to noxious weeds and invasives. So what I've done is kind of mask those a little bit. I didn't want to completely cut off the neighborhoods from the site, so I proposed some mowed cut-through areas, which is very common. If you look at a lot of Dane County parks, dog parks, it's a very, very common treatment that is done effectively. And then moving last, the main core of the comments was kind of relocating the hub of activity closer to the future restroom facilities. And all that we know is that there's going to be a facility in that corner that has not been designed yet, the building or the site. We did have a meeting with Tracy in Public Works to discuss kind of the future planning of that. It's unplanned, except for that we know that it's going to be there. So zooming in a little bit into the site, we've kind of set back the basketball area, the court area over here. We wanted it in proximity to the restrooms and the other activity, but have a little bit of separation from the play spaces and the homes. There can be noise concerns with that. And then getting into the core of the site, I've located an open air shelter with kind of a radiating pattern with a good sized playground, including 2 to 5 and 5 to 12 playground equipment over wood chip surfacing, engineered wood fiber surfacing, and then a corresponding kind of community gathering space, picnic space around the plaza, but then breaking that up with picnic spaces, whether with tree cover or open lawn, and also adding in kind of a bicycle court here with seating, bicycle repair station, bike racks in close proximity to both basketball court, shelter, and the playground. And to help to kind of define the space, I've had kind of this arc of canopy trees with stones. Those stones can serve as not only kind of a defining space. So if there is semi-organized activity up here, soccer games, frisbee, football, whatever, it just kind of informally defines this space as maybe this is a less active space to kind of just divide those uses up a little bit. And the boulders themselves can serve as kind of informal stepping stones, kind of play elements for kids as well. This exhibit here is just showing kind of existing trees and proposed. There's a strong desire to have more trees in this area. And I'd like to hear kind of to what extent the commission feels about what I'm proposing here. Sue had made some comments about potentially adding more within the improved native areas to create kind of an oak savanna, which can certainly be accomplished. This is similar to the last example, just showing kind of a native palette, just focusing on those native plants, trees, perennials, grasses, sedges, pollinator habitat. And this is imagery just to help communicate the design to both you and the public. So here we're looking south. You can see the large play area and its corresponding park shelter, vicinity to the basketball court. Another angle down here, just looking southeast. Mislabel, apologize. This is looking southwest. Kind of gives you a view of the entrance into the site from the neighborhoods along Scarlet Drive. And this view here kind of shows that entrance as well from a ground perspective. This would be the future well house here. I took some liberties and made it brick, even though it could be cedar shake sided, who knows. And looking to east on that existing east-west trail. Some other views. And these are kind of character images showing some of the proposed improvements. Open air shelter, landscape stones, bike repair station, bike racks, 5 to 12 equipment, 2 to 5 equipment, and then some ancillary equipment, swings as well. This slide here is, I think, apropos to kind of spur discussion. But before we get into that, I'd like to hear if there's any initial feedback from the commission regarding the proposed plan.
Question?
Go ahead, Patrick.
One question to Rob.
Yeah.
The shelter, at least as you are picturing it there, it has a 2-level roof. There's a center raised part on that roof. Would you see that as being open between that upper and lower level, or would that be like plexiglass or something up there? A sort of a sideways, a vertical skylight of some sort, either open or with plexiglass?
I believe it's open, but that's a specific design element that
Much detail.
The next step when kind of designing that down to a T, you'd want to take into consideration a few different things. That would be one of them. Okay. That's added cost to have that. It's called kind of a carnival roof style. As long as you touched on that shelter, another consideration is lighting. Lighting was one thing on the survey that was identified. I'm showing on the plans 6 lights along this pathway. But in conversation, when is the appropriate time to add that? And it might be when that building comes online, and then your controls for not only these lights, but also this any associated lights or electrical services could be serviced by that other city building.
Is there more that you want to go through and explaining things, or should we start comments now?
Yeah, I'm open for dialogue right now. I guess maybe I'll just finish up my areas I'd like to get touched on.
Yeah, go ahead.
This area over here, there was a lot of the talk focused on this area here, and there wasn't a lot of feedback for what to do over here. There was an interest in expanding naturalized passive areas, and that is why I kind of extended that native area, but I didn't want to cut off existing uses of the sites, and also kind of this whole leg of the site. I'm showing this here, but I think there's room for discussion about how that should be treated to handle access and safety and things. Sue had, I can't remember if Scott had shared all those emails of Sue's to the rest of the commission, but there was talk of split rail fence or shrubs. So that is another area that I think we should talk about tonight. Like, there's opportunity to expand the naturalized area here. I left this open because if there's organized use of this space, that pretty much uses all that kind of flexible open space. And I thought having, an area for Frisbee or to kick a soccer ball in close proximity to the play area here, a lot of visibility. Not that there's not over here, but if this is being used on the south side, that would have an opportunity there. So I'd like to know if the commission thinks that's a useful open space, or if they'd want to maximize the naturalized area there. Reviewing a lot of the other city parks, the basketball courts are oftentimes half courts. So I'd like to hear the commission's interest in full versus half court. And finally, the lighting and the phasing of that. If you would agree that there's some sense to be made to bring that online with that building. So now I would open it up for comments from the commission.
Well, and if I might just add a general comment in regards to budget, I did include in your packet of information the dollars that I see potentially allocated for this project, but that is our sole source of funding. So as I view, once we get the design and when we begin into implementation, I think it's really critical that we make sure that we, to some degree, keep that budget in mind, where it may be a case of a base project and then some additional things. And when you begin to start to put, lights and electricity and all of those kinds of things, that might be something that could potentially be added in a future phase. I know, Rob, you and I, we did have conversations about, if we didn't have electricity at that shelter, to create some kind of solar array or panels for that shelter for lighting purposes if we didn't have, power or electricity to the site. So I just wanted to make that general comment that we are in a budget, and as we continue on, we want to make sure that we stay within that budget.
Yeah, and just one final thing. Thank you, Scott. I show solar panels here. That was based off a discussion with Tracy from Public Works. That's not decided yet, but that is a consideration. There's interest from other people in the city to have that at public sites. So I don't want people to get too nervous about that, but that's all.
Okay, and we've got people queued up to speak or ask, and we'll go in this order as I saw them make themselves known. Julia, and then Patrick, and then Heidi. So take it away, Julia.
Yes, hi. I have two questions. One is for Scott and one is for Rob. So the first one, Scott, is when we look at the budget page that you put there, I have a question. I want to understand how these numbers are coming, okay? If you look at the first part, the Stony Prairie total is $213,000, but then we have the Crescent Crossing Park improvement fee. And then you mentioned that the total amount is $567, and then we need to discount the dog playground and the parkland credit. So the total is $286,000 for that park. So the balance, I want to understand, the balance you said $281,000. From where do you get the balance? Because I think that the balance should be the total amount net from the Stony Prairie 213 plus the net from the Crescent Crossing, that is $286,000. I think you have a math error there.
I could certainly,
Okay.
Julia, but I think you're, just as additional information, if you recall with the Crescent Crossing development now, as they continue to develop their tot lot and their dog playground, they will receive credit. So that was the general reduction. So that may be not as solid at this point either. So I think just the methodology I think is important there.
Yeah, but I don't know from where you get the $281,000, because I think we need to know exactly how close we are, to the amount that we have to build this park, because I understand the Crescent Crossing total was $566,000. We deduct the tot lot minus the parkland credit, so the total in hand for us, it should be $286,000 plus the $213,000, so that one it should be our total budget for this park.
I may have miscalculated,
Okay,
but
no, I want to be sure. Okay,
Yep.
so then it changed a lot of things here. We have more money.
well, that could be. But
Can
again,
you-
if the Crescent Crossing development dollars, if the cost of implementation, their plan comes up in higher, then we'd have less.
So it will be great for us, because we need to make a decision about the design of this park. If we have maybe an Excel spreadsheet with the different alternative, because it's confusing. So I want to know if we have $281,000 or we have $500,000 to do this park. You know what I mean?
What can I get to my
Okay.
my packet?
Okay, so that one was one question that we need to. Because I couldn't read this, I was confused with the number. Maybe Katie has another question. But my second, because I want.
Okay. The 281 that's on here, the
Yeah.
Crescent Crossing total of 567,580. If you subtract out the tot lot 204 and the 82,000, Crescent Crossing has an available balance of $281,007.
What about?
So it's the 213 from Stoner Prairie plus the 281 is, I believe, what is available
Yeah, okay.
to us.
Well, but then we've encumbered 20,000 and 1950 already, so you've got to take that off of there too. So.
Okay, so that one, we need to clarify that to be, that one is one, okay? And then my question for Rob is, because it's my second question, okay? Is I really like the design. I will prioritize that we have, prairie or native plants, so we can reduce the cost of maintaining this park. This one is going to be a neighborhood park. So I like the idea of to have all of those, I don't know if they're going to be prairie or native plant, but the most that we can, we do that. So, to reduce the cost of maintenance and also to be more environment friendly. and then I will keep the big space open because it's used, so, but in general, I like, the design of the park.
Just as a follow-up. So this area here, do you like this open the way I have it, or would you like to see that expanded?
My personal opinion, I would like to see it expanded.
Okay.
Because, if
The green space or the prairie?
the green space, the light green, that area.
You'd like that to be larger?
Yeah, larger.
And then the prairie be smaller?
No, what prairie?
Just the way it is.
No, I want the prairie to be larger. I want to you cover most of the area with prairie.
Okay.
I don't know. This is my personal opinion.
Okay, anything else before I move on to the next person? Who did I say was next? Patrick or Heidi?
Yeah. Okay, several comments. I do like this design a lot from what we saw before. Some things that I was thinking about along here. One small point, I like, various points. I like that the basketball is away from the houses to the north and the houses to the west, so the noise doesn't bother them so much. I think the full court is probably better because I've seen that sometimes there's a group on one end that's separate from another group on the other end of a full court, so that makes it available to more. I like that the shelter is a little more centralized away from the future well house. That was something that looked kind of jammed off into the northwest corner, and now it's a little more in the center there, so I like that. A small point, the line of rocks that goes from the east-west path and then counterclockwise up to the playground, I would say continues a line of, boulders actually, continues the line of boulders around to that northwest corner of the playground just to continue it. And then biggest point that I have is I did read Sue's comments on the shelter and the circle of trees going around on the north side, and I think that was a good point of the trees if it was something that was rearranged a little, that could provide shade for the shelter, but I am concerned that that might be a major revision rather than a minor revision, so I was thinking about that. What I would like to suggest as possibly an alternative, and see if Sue might like this, on page 10 in our packet, we have the east-west path, and then on the south side of the east-west path, there are 4 existing trees over to the east, and it shows total of 3 trees, especially the 2 right directly south of the shelter building are added along here. And I'm thinking that instead of just 2, add a fuller line of trees all along on that south side of the east-west path, which might have the same effect of what Sue was going for, of shade for the path as well as hopefully shade for the shelter along there. And I will yield back to the chair. I've been watching those investigative hearings on TV.
Patrick, just before we move on quickly, actually for the whole commission, I'm drawing on my screen. I just want to make sure, can you all see when I'm making little, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the comments.
Heidi.
Hi, I just have 2 concerns. First of all, it's a beautiful design. I mean, it's a gorgeous park. With regards to the prairie and expanding the prairie, prairies can be quite expensive in terms of maintenance and upkeep. So that's something we may want to keep in mind as well in terms of costs going forward. And then the second thing is I liked Scott's idea about maybe doing this in phases. This year we did the inclusive park, which was, a pretty big expenditure. And I'm just wondering if maybe it would benefit us better to do this in stages, to get it, instead of having to cut back on this and cut back on that, we can do it the way we want to do it, just not all at once.
Scott, do you have any, Scott, regarding Heidi's question, is there anything you can tell us about? Because the way I understand it is we're just going to have the dollars that are coming in as development continues, and it's shrunk from when we first started thinking of the park to where we are now. Any new money would have to come from capital improvement requests and approvals from the council. So if there are improvements that exceed the budget we have, that's the only way the money is going to come in. Or if there's, groups that fundraise, et cetera. Am I along? Is that correct, Scott?
That is correct. And who knows, maybe the competition or the bidding it becomes better or those kinds of things. And I think the idea of creating a master plan that really makes a lot of sense, and then the budget environment and dollars and all of that is really going to drive the project. Certainly we're going to want to, as a commission, I would suggest that the commission is going to want to prioritize what pieces of the final master plan do you feel are the top priority, and then we can bid those and bid alternates and all of those kinds of things once we get to that bidding phase.
Okay, is there anyone else? I have comments, but I wanted everybody else to speak first. Okay. Sarah, go right ahead.
Sorry, just minor comments that I would agree that I like the idea of a larger basketball court, the full court basketball court, because I do frequently see two groups, like Patrick said. I like the idea of having the trees line the path as well, where I feel like that's something that we've kind of been doing for parks within Fitchburg, and I just think it's aesthetically pleasing and makes sense to provide shade. I agree with making the prairie area larger within that top space, just because there'll be plenty of open area. Yep. So make the prairie area longer. And I also agree with keeping the tot area as is, just because it does seem like a usable space. So I think that for feedback on that, I agree. We didn't dive into it last time, but I think that keeping it usable now makes sense. So those are my only comments.
Okay. One of the trees along the south side of that east-west path will look nice, and we want more trees for the attaining that 30% tree canopy goal in the urban service area. I don't think any tree planted there will cast any shade onto the playground equipment, though. Just judging distances. And so I know it's very simplistic for me to have asked the question, can we just flip this whole play area and shelter, reverse their locations so that the shelter is where the play equipment is, the play equipment is where the shelter is? Then you have room to plant trees on the south side of where the play equipment is, south sides and west sides. And that is where shade is most appreciated, whether you're building a house or you're playing in a playground. That was one question I had. And Rob, I acknowledge that's perhaps simplistic. A question I came up with that I did not think to write sooner is if the basketball full court were rotated so that the long end is along the path, and that might do two things, because I'm referring also back in my mind to, and it was included again in this packet, the information that our forester gave to us about how to, in the future, manage the space most efficiently after a prairie's been planted and established. And she suggested, and I also appreciate Rob's comment that, some mowed paths are not out of the norm. But what we have here, if you're not talking about the node on the east side of the path with the existing tot lot, if we're not talking about that and we're just talking about the main large space, we have an L-shaped prairie. And if we instead inverted the basketball court so the long side is along the path, the east-west path. Now you would have room for more of a rectangular space, and that's a little less edge surface area for infiltrating weeds. At the same time, I'm a little queasy about prairie over everything that isn't playground or basketball court. But if it were up to me and it were my yard, I'd love it. I'm curious about what will those neighbors say. And that's why it's great to get their input. Also, in that main space where the existing prairie is shown, there's that little triangular tip that comes up there. That we need to incorporate into our prairie establishment, because right now that's out on permit. The idea was growing pollinators, and there are some native pollinators in there, but there's stuff in there that is not, that as long as it's left as it is, it's going to be a constant source of weed seeds blowing into our prairie. So if we can just fill that space in to say, we're going to have to remediate that when we get started on everything else. Another question I have is the rocks in the arc, they make a nice, beautiful landscape statement, but if they're considered something that can be climbed on, is that considered a playscape, and can it be located adjacent to a playground? And then my bottom line is we're looking at cost again. So if we're worrying whether path lighting is going to cost too much or be unattainable, of all the things that are shown in this whole section, the rocks serve the least use. As beautiful as the arc is, I'd put that at the bottom of the list as far as retaining. And thank you for everybody listening to me expound. Are there any other comments, or Rob, things you need to educate me about?
Well, I don't know, educate, but I'd like to comment on some of the things you said. Thank you for the comments. The orientation of the basketball courts, that's industry standard. Basketball courts in general are oriented north and south. If you want to turn that on its head, that I think I would want buy-in from the rest of the commission to do that. As far as the shade of the playground and the trees, I think there's opportunity to add more shade along this portion of it. There are trees right here which will give some portion of shade to the playground. As far as the prairie edge, I did bring our restoration ecologist into the fold on this project, who has a ton of experience doing this exact kind of work, and she didn't see issues with it. It is an establishment period. You're looking at a 3-year maintenance period before you're going to get full germination from the seeds that would be planted. And what that might look like to some of those that may not know is that you would go in and do kind of a non-selective herbicide treatment. You would definitely want to till the soil. Then you would do your seeding. Being that it is so flat, you might not need a mat, but you might do like a straw overlay with an annual cover crop. And in the second season, you would do 2 different mowings, maybe 3 different mowings, to height like 4 to 6 inches. And then you would spot treat herbicide for invasives. And then the 3rd year, you would do mowings again, but at that point you would have enough built up thatch layer, which just is the kind of the old growth of the native plants and things, that you could consider doing prescribed burns. She was very well aware of the proximity to houses and the schools, but having trained professionals, that can be done, and it's super beneficial to the health of the prairie. Let me see. Other notes here. That portion of the park
Yeah.
here to include. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and as far as the stones, yeah, it's there. It's like I said, it defines spaces, but if it's the desire of the commission to have that go, then that can happen.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
it really we'll end up having to prioritize dollars. And so
Mhm.
that's just my opinion about that portion of it. Now, regarding that question about does there need to be a separation between playscape and play space, or playground and playscape? Are they two different rules or laws that?
This is totally okay. You don't
Okay,
have to worry about impact attenuating surfaces. You know, if it was, it's more about fall zones of designated play equipment that you would have to stay away from. You know, that's where you need the impact attenuating surfaces and keeping things in the clear there. So
yeah.
that would not be a concern.
Okay, well, and just so I will hope that however our committee settles on at the very end of what is selected for the final design, we also have to take into account our staffing. And so I do also want to give weight to what our naturalist has to say about what time and dollars in the long term it will take to keep it in good condition. So that's point one. And then point two, for the entire park as it's planned, as it's presented to the neighborhoods, again, the staff has to be able to tweak it so it's implemented in a way that they can maintain it. And I know that they're going to be sensitive to designs and all the input, but if something gets changed here and there, I hope as it's presented to the neighborhood, the neighbors understand that it may not look 100% like the drawing that they see, or even that we see at the end. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now we have Katie would like to speak, and then following that, Julia again.
I have 1 second and then, yeah. So my other question is, you know, I don't want to see too much grass in this park, so I'm going to vote everything against, you know, to keep more grass area, okay? The other question is, if we are not agree with prairie because it's too expensive to maintain, to do, well, we don't keep everything natural. You know, we keep some area that the thing grows, we have some path, and that's it. You know, a lot of parks, they do that. Nothing happened, okay? My other question is from Chris and Katie, that you are the expert. I want to really know your opinion.
Katie, you're on. And then Chris, if you'd like to speak.
All right, well, first, thank you, Rob, for the update. I really like the improvements that have been made to this concept drawing. I am kind of caught between whether or not I would want the prairie space enlarged, or if we keep additional open green space to the north of the playground, simply because the neighborhood that's to the west of this, the lots are so tight that we know that if anyone that lives to the west of here wants a place to play, they're going to be coming over to this area. And having the available mown lawn gives multiple groups opportunities to be in the same area around the shelter and the playground without interfering with one another. But at the same time, you know, we have an enormous amount of mown green space, both within this park and in the 2 adjacent schools. So I think there's good reason to potentially enlarge the prairie space here. And I happen to like the stone ring. I thought that was a great idea. I like how it divides the spaces. And it's something I guess I would like to see kept in here. It's not a terribly expensive improvement. I liked Patrick's idea of extending it all the way around the ring towards the shelter. It's a unique feature. You know, it's nice to see something unique about each of the parks that we go and visit within our system. And I think it's great that we have something planned for this one that's a little different. So I thought that was a great suggestion to add into this plan. And I happen to prefer the arrangement of the shelter to the south where it's shown now versus the playground to the north, simply because I feel like it's a good spot for groups that come to watch people using the fields to the south. They can hang out within that shelter and still have a good view, a good vantage point down into those fields and the games going on. But if we put them to the other side of the playground, that dual use is no longer allowed for people who may have come, with a spouse or something, but with small children, so they can sit in the shelter and watch off both sides. But if we put the shelter to the north, that's less of a possibility. So,
Thank you. I appreciate all of that. Katie, as long and I know we will get, if Chris does want to add anything, but I have a quick question and Rob can answer it. I heard you say that the standard orientation of the basketball court is shown as is, and I'm assuming that's because of sunrise sunset issues. I see you're nodding your head yes.
Yep.
Okay. Do we? I still think it's a better use of space to flip it. You would have a little bit more mowed green space in a block if you did. And that is where you could plant some trees that would shade along the west edge of it so that you're not going to have late afternoon or early evening games with sun blaring in on the court. If we did flip it, I think it's just a better use of the overall space in that section. But anybody else who wants to have a different opinion, that's fine. Christopher, do you have anything you want to add?
Sure. I agree with what a lot of people have said. I think the area around the shelter and the playground has some really fun geometry. Is a nicely arranged space. I think there's a lot of creativity there, and it's pretty unique and fun. The little bosques in those squares, that's super cool. So I don't really have much critique around that area. I do think the trade-off in rotating the basketball court I'm not sure that would be worth it given the amount of space we'd buy. Especially, I think the court, is a high likelihood that it's going to be used in the evenings when the sun is likely to be most directly in someone's eyes. So I think sticking with standard north-south orientation is that's what I would recommend myself. For the rest of the site, I think I also lean towards expanding on the prairie area. There's just so much open green space to the south, and the reason you left that green space to the north is entirely valid, and I think that was wise of you to give that option. But for me, I feel like the amount of times there'd be conflict with groups using the play fields is not going to be every day. So I think because we're leaning into the more naturalistic spaces in this park, I think it's worthwhile to have that additional prairie space there. And I would also like to see maybe more of it continue across into that little thumb there to the east with the existing tot lot, maybe in a broader gesture of prairie continuing through there and connecting those two little bubbles, making them one. And really making a more obvious connection of that prairie swath sweeping across the north-south path there, really making it all feel like part of the same space and not so much separated now. And by extension, then, I would say that line of trees there as screening wouldn't be so necessary. Understanding that the more edges we have in the prairie, the trickier maintenance is. I really like the idea of multiple mown pathways kind of meandering through there. And since they would be mowed, that would help keep weeds in check. So I would lean on staff who have more firsthand experience with maintaining spaces like this, how much problem that could cause. But if it's not creating extra difficulties, I would like to see even more pathways in the prairie.
And if I may interject, just certainly in the maintenance end of it, once the prairie is established, paths provide great fire breaks, because I suspect that once we do get established, these will be maintained just in the spring with a burn and maybe just some spot herbicides here and there just to get some of the woody growth out of there. But that would, really be, something Anna could advise us on as far as fire breaks and those kinds of things.
And then I think the last thing that I had was realizing that prairies aren't necessarily intended to have a ton of trees in them. I think we might want to play with the ecology here a little bit and introduce more trees, in clusters in spaces, but keeping a lot of open prairie space, but arranging more trees in clusters, especially reaching towards that goal that Anna mentioned about tree cover, and then those clusters of trees can be a great opportunity for more paths to weave in and around with little seating nodes, benches under the trees, things like that. I think that would make the prairie space much more interesting, and allow more people to take advantage of it. And I think that's about all I had. Thank you.
Okay, and
Thanks, Chris.
both to Chris and Katie. Chris is the landscape architect in our group, and Katie, park planning, and I understand she had her own prairie or savanna at one point. I end up interchanging the words prairie and savanna, but am I correct to say then, Rob, that prairies have few to no trees? Savannas is an oak savanna is where you establish oak growth at however you arrange it. But a lot of the same plants survive in either environment. So if tell me, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong, if the area is seeded with something that, first of all, it's becoming established over the years, many years, and it's getting full sun, but as oaks that are plunked in there here and there mature, most of what's there will still survive because it's then shifted to a part sun environment. Am I on the right church, right pew?
I'll give you my experience. This is going to be a very controlled prairie, and it's going to be made up of mostly grass and supports. Introducing native trees like oaks and things in sporadic areas. Personally, I think it's a added value, especially in a park setting. They do exist in prairies, especially on prairie edges. So if you think of this as like a prairie edge, it's appropriate to have, hardwood species or trees in there. So, Chris, I like the suggestion, and personally, I think it's a good idea to add some of those kind of fringe trees in there. Visually and ecologically, I think it can add some value to it. So,
okay, and the oaks would survive the burning process, whereas
I go to a Dane County dog park, Nine Springs Dog Park in kind of South Madison area, and it's, I don't know how many acres, 20 acres maybe, and they've done a lot of prairie restoration, and it's kind of oak savanna, and it's gorgeous. So for any of you the dogs that want to take a field trip, I would encourage you to do that.
That's a good representation, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. That's good advice. Does anyone else have additional comments or questions? Because we've on this area that we focus. Katie.
Sue, I have one additional comment, and that is mostly aimed at Scott. The trail connection that is in the southwest corner out into the neighborhood, which actually is on school property. I would encourage you, as that trail moves forward, to see if we can work with the district to continue it further south and connect into the kind of overall larger school pathway network, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for people who come, especially in the evenings, and walk the loops out here, that will create a much broader interconnected network. And it kind of cuts off right in that corner.
So Katie, are you saying, in addition to what's shown here, that the path continues south all the way down to Lacey Road?
Not necessarily to Lacey Road, but that we would work with the district to see if they were open to the idea of public paved trails connecting further to the south and back into the school, sidewalk and path connections.
Okay. And that'll be Scott's finesse work to start. Yeah, thank you.
I think that'd be an easy sell to the school district. As long as we pay for it. And plow
I don't mean
it.
a direct conversation here, but can we talk about this area? I think what Chris had mentioned, if that prairie area was expanded, however that shakes out, I think that would somewhat accomplish what we're trying to do in focusing people to cross at the designated area. But I would like to see if there's kind of consensus with that.
I was thinking, as Chris mentioned it too, that nothing ruins a quick bicycle ride shortcut across a park when it's all 4 feet of prairie plants, 4 feet tall prairie plants through most of it. So that might answer the question. And I also would like to, everyone has tried to understand what my concern is. And, we don't want the kids doing mid-block crossings erratically. I'm talking about elementary school kids when there's no sidewalks there, and I want them directed towards the crosswalk. So landscaping of a taller growth more throughout that area would be great. And, you could still put some native shrubs in the portion where I suggested a fence if it were still perceived to be some type of a problem. But really one of the things I wrote at the end of the email that you got was that really the principal of the elementary school can work with the families that live in that portion of Lacey Heights. There's only a certain amount of homes where kids are going to arrive at the school from that area of concern. And we can play it by ear. If the worst thing that has to happen is there's some shrubs added to slow them down more than an established prairie does. And that could be something that, we can skip the fence, we can skip the trees. It looks more cohesive if we know that we're going to have plantings that are a barrier to last minute shortcuts through there. I hope that makes sense. Rob gets it? Thank you.
If I might, the consensus on retaining the existing playground in that area.
For now, yes. But when it ages out, you will already have invested in a 2 to 5 year old playground near the shelter, and I would not see sense in replacing another one there. When you stand there and look around in the yards that you can see in, most of the homes that have small children have their own 2 to 5 year old playground in their yards, right across the street from that park, left and right. So it could go when it goes, if it's got 10, 15 years left in it or more or less, that would be my opinion. Then maybe there could be other uses, like just the quiet space of picnic tables in there for people who want to sit and just listen to the hummingbirds and bees, sit with a sandwich or a cup of coffee and read a book. That would be my opinion. Anyone have opinions? Patrick, I see your name has come up.
I want to ask one question of Rob first. The long north-south white oval there, is that a hedge, or is that maybe what Sue has been mentioning as a split rail fence or something? I just want to understand that feature.
It's shown as a kind of a shrub line, but it basically just signifies some sort of intentional treatment of that edge. And Chris, I think, suggested, maybe just expanding that prairie area, which is, I think, could be a very effective deterrent of kids crossing that way.
Okay. Then some comments from me here. For things like the prairie, whether it's more or less, I'm okay with either more or less. No opinion, no preference on that. For the basketball full court, whether it's north-south or east-west, really no preference on that. One thing I was looking at is that there would be the east-west path lighting eventually right to the south of it. If it's north-south, then the southern court is lit up better, so kids can play a little bit later into the dark. If the basketball court is east-west, then it could light up both of it, but either way looks fine. For the line of boulders, I don't think that we need to consider dropping the boulders off as a cost savings, because as I have seen, the Parks Department collects up boulders from various projects, and there must be a stockpile somewhere, and I think these should be free. And if we don't have enough right away, then in future projects digging holes somewhere and they come up with some boulders, add to this circle. So I think that's a no-cost option. I'm thinking, and somebody can tell me if this is correct or not, that we like the idea of a more full line of trees going all along on the south side of the east-west path. And if Rob says that he can squeeze in some trees immediately on the north side of that east-west path to give some shade a little closer to the shelter, then hopefully that might take care of the additional shade that Sue is looking for. As far as lighting, I would like the idea of a solar panel and then some kind of a light in this shelter, but I'm thinking that in the longer term, if we don't add lighting or real electrical lighting into the shelter right away, that may be a little hard to retrofit. And the same thing for lighting along the east-west path. I kind of think they should come in sooner rather than later. If they are later, I can see having a solar panel and a sort of a night light or so under the shelter roof, but it gets to be redundant also if we do add electric lighting in later. I think that it should have electric service into the shelter. I just think that some brighter lighting, maybe a little more than solar lights, and then the east-west pathway lights would be valuable. In McGaw Park, the pickleball court lighting that was just put in last week, I've noticed that it is motion sensors. The lighting dims down a little bit when it hasn't had any people nearby, and then if you step underneath one, it gets a little brighter. It's not a big differential, but I like that motion sensor idea, so that's what I would like to see along this east-west path, is something motion sensor. So it dims it down a little, and when somebody walks along there, the lights will come on as they walk along. I like this motion sensor idea. And let's see. Oh, I have one question to Sue. I've seen this 30% canopy proposal for the city mentioned a few times, and I'm wondering if you could just explain a little bit more on that, of what the goal is there
Sure.
to us, and then I yield.
Okay. As I understand it, and others can correct me if I don't recite this, there is in the comprehensive plan a 30% tree canopy cover or goal within the urban service area of Fitchburg. So not the rural parts that do not have sewer and water and cannot be developed right now into large residential areas. And I don't know if it's something in the 20-some% that was calculated. And I think that was before the emerald ash borer started decimating more of that. So Anna Healy would know for sure. Scott may know. So when we met as an ad hoc committee, I pointed out that one of the ways to catch up is to make maximum use of the parks. So everywhere you can, you put tree canopy in, and you have a variety where you can, because you never know when the next disease is going to wipe out a monoculture of ash trees, etc. So that's what the reference is. And whether, we can do some kind of a calculation, because, if you plant 50 trees and they're all 3 years old, that's not much of a canopy. But if you're extrapolating out X number of years, you've really added a lot to cooling the earth, keeping the parks cool, better for the environment overall. And anybody else, please chime in. Katie, Chris, anybody else? Did I get that close? Oh, nobody's disagreeing, so we'll leave it at that.
More trees, the better, Sue.
Exactly. That's my short
Got it.
story long, and Scott Scott did a better job of describing that. I have about the path lighting and the gazebo. Again, we want power to the gazebo or the shelter. Also, because don't we, Scott, have power to every shelter that can be reserved?
I would say yes, Sue, but certainly in the interest of budget, the idea, and I know that shelters can be, designed and retrofit to string wire through them at a future date, but just taking under budget considerations, I think
Right.
At this point, and I think the idea of solar and those, and maybe even the path lighting could be on solar cells or those kinds of things. But to Rob's point, the best opportunity to add electricity or power to this would be when they do design that well, and then at that point we could incorporate the power into the park.
Understood. And just the other consideration is that the shelter is right along the curve of Velt Drive and Cornelia Street, and we'll have to see what street lighting is there. That is going to bring some lighting into the park on that end in the short term. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? I thought this is a phase 2 comment, but I didn't want to forget about it. And we never talked about, perhaps the survey, there wasn't any real interest specified for community gardens. And if we did have an interest in community gardens, you want water, the chance to hook up a hose. And of course, that would be in this area where you would develop the public works water pressure building. But I just wanted to be there, as that we have stated that may be something to consider. Also, we're always seeming to want to retrofit water fountains after the fact. So if we can make note that that's something that needs to be part of the discussion when we talk about the public works building, I'd appreciate it. So if anybody else even has any other comments about that, throw them out now.
I have a
Go ahead.
question. So now that you mentioned a water fountain, so this design, because we don't know when they're going to build the well and all of that part. So we shouldn't. So my question is, do we have a water fountain now in this design, close to the playground or the open shelter? Is part of that?
Currently, we do not have that designed in.
Okay, so
to
we
do
should
that,
put
and
it.
maybe Katie could comment, but we would, at this point, we'd probably, I imagine there's service stubbed in for that well house. Otherwise, we'd have to tap a main in that roadway. Katie might know more.
Katie, any comments?
Nice, Rob. I unfortunately don't know as much about what utilities are stubbed into this park currently as I wish I did. I think that that well house and the restrooms are probably a high enough priority for the city that I think we could likely allow this park to develop without a separate drinking fountain. And I wouldn't normally say that. I think they get a lot of use, and I think they're really, really important. My guess is that adding a drinking fountain into this one on its own service is probably a $15,000 to $20,000 addition if we're going to have to bring in a new service. So it is a concern if it's something that we know could be easily accommodated at the future well house for a much lower price. So,
okay, can I speak?
Yes, please.
I think, I understand that, but I am looking at this without that well, because I don't know when the city is going to build that. Okay, so, and I don't know they're going to be restroom because nothing has been decided yet. So, but maybe it's something that we can incorporate in the CIP plan for next year. So I imagine there is water there close to the park. So it's going to be connected, but it's something that we can think for next year to put it in the CIP, to add this feature to the park. We have done that in the last couple of years, adding water fountain to other parks in the city that they don't have it, so could be another option, how to fund this, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it certainly that just keeps it current, that we're not going to forget about it. Yeah, and I seem to recall that there's services brought into that lot. The city Public Works bought the two, what are almost equivalent or equally equivalent to the two buildable lots belong to Public Works, and they already put that connection in. So either way, it would not be as expensive as us just starting on our own and needing to dig up the street to get started. So I think we're going to get there in the short term or a little bit longer term. Is there any other comments? Have we talked about everything here? We really solved a lot, and I appreciate everybody contributing as they did.
We're only an hour and 20 minutes in.
I'll just
Keep going.
add a comment from me. It's not ideal when we start talking about that the well house there, that's where the restrooms are going to be, and that would be, yes, very easy to have a drinking fountain on there. So it's not ideal that we don't know when that is going to be built. I suppose we could just look into this and ask Bill Balke or Tracy Foss or something what their timing is on building that. I guess, again, it's not ideal, but that may have to wait for that to be built to get our usual restrooms and drinking fountain.
Very true. Is that anybody else? So I wanted to ask Scott to clarify. I think I heard when you remarked about this being taken to the to a public comment for the 5 neighborhoods that are in the area park zone. It goes to them somehow, and then their comments are brought back to us, and then we as a Parks Commission talk about their comments, and we noodle that around a little bit and talk about discrepancies and what we may or may not be able to do. Is that correct?
I think that's pretty accurate, Sue. Certainly, I think at the end of the day, with the comments that we've received from the Park Commission, that we can come up with our final concept, and then certainly as we promote the concept and gather comments from the neighbors, I think we can characterize a lot of different things to kind of frame the comments that we are going to receive and those kinds of things. So, I think we're going to be able to, if anything else, provide an opportunity for folks to provide some comments. But I am confident that, just as the Park Commission is very receptive to what we currently have with a couple revisions. I'm thinking that the local neighborhoods and things are going to, neighbors are going to have the same type of comments.
Okay, yeah, because the rationales have been made clear. Rob helped us understand what's there and why it's there, and we've all had a chance to learn that and to mention what we think. Just a couple things I learned from being on the ad hoc committee is that if you count, and this is cheating a little, but if you count the public works land, which is contiguous with all the park land there, it's just shy of 11 acres. But if you don't count it, it's about 10.5 acres. So of the 10.5 acres, 6.6 acres has belonged to the city or been in the city park system for decades. The land that came with the brand new developments, the Stoner Prairie neighborhood development built by William Ryan and Crescent Crossing, I don't think they contributed land there, but that's 3.8 acres. And the reason I raise that point is that there had been some confusion because the entire planning district for that part of the urban service area being developed is called Stoner Prairie, North Stoner Prairie. And that goes way west of Seminole Highway all the way out to Fitchburg Road. And so then on top of that, one developer, William Ryan, called the 130 homes that he put in Stoner Prairie. So there were many people living in Stoner Prairie, 130 lots, that believe that that entire 11 acres is theirs alone. And so I'm just going through the math of the land to explain, if you get feedback from people, that why can't we just do this the way people in one neighborhood out of 5 would like, that's the reason. The majority of the land that we're working with didn't come into the park system through those brand new subdivisions. It came in when the school was built. So I hope that made sense. And Julia, I see you would like to speak. Go ahead.
So my question is, when we present this to the neighborhoods, I think we need to be clear that this one is kind of the final design. You know what I mean? That because otherwise we need to, there is in the notes that Scott put in the agenda is we need to also, if we're going to make major adjustment to this park plan, we need to, first of all, it has to go to council for approval because we need to increase the fees, to do all of that. So we had to be conscious that, we already talked too much about this park. I think this is a great option. And when we go there, it's kind of like, here is, and we can give it some flexibility because we need to have their input, but it's like, kind of this one is the final design. We are sharing with you what, because they have the opportunity to come today here to express their opinion. All of these have been posted for 2 weeks, on the website. So no one is here to discuss this plan for none of those neighborhoods. So I think that, because I don't want to, my idea is that we have this neighborhood meeting and then the neighborhood come with all these ideas. We do this, we do that, we change this, we change that. And also, no, we already have those discussions. We already know how much is our budget. We don't have too much room, Yeah, it will be great to add all of this, but we don't have the money. So this is the budget. This is a very nice park that we can do with this amount of money and move on. So I think we need to set up those boundaries because otherwise, and set the expectation about the meeting because we don't want people to get unhappy because maybe they come with some idea that they can redo this plan and then we say, no. But this is my comment, and I hope we all agree on that. I don't know, but yeah.
Okay, and then Scott and Rob, one or both of you explain how we do get to this next point where you're getting the input from these 5 neighborhoods? What's the plan?
Rob and I will caucus and we'll figure out that plan. Certainly, there's different, platforms and neighborhood associations and those kinds of things. We'll certainly utilize all of those platforms and ideas, and certainly if the Park Commission has ideas on thoughts on how we can get the information out, we'll certainly receptive to those thoughts, but we'll spread it as far as we can, that's for sure.
Do you envision a in-person meeting only, or something where people living in those neighborhoods, like the survey, they logged in, registered their address, and then it was verified they were coming from that specific neighborhood, and then they could look at the plans and write comments, or a combination of both, perhaps?
Well, and I think, Sue, we can certainly take the comments that we received tonight, and Julia provided some comments, and then determine how we're best to get the information out to everybody. And maybe you have some thoughts there, Rob, on how to do that. But, at the end of the day, the public process has really, kind of been almost completed. It's just kind of a final, this is what it is, any final tweaks that you would like to see, that kind of thing, and go from there.
Anything and I've heard you say you and Rob will caucus. That's fine. We just have the 5 different ways that people living in those neighborhoods hear from their, whether or not they have a neighborhood association that's mandatory. Some of them don't have neighborhood associations yet. It's every neighborhood of the 5 is different. So whatever way that's not adding a lot of dollars to communicate to everybody that there's either a meeting coming up, or B, a place you can log in online to look at this plan and provide comments. However you want to do it, then each neighborhood association has to figure out how they tell their people. So for my own purposes of being part of the Wildwood group, we just made some signs and put them in places. At that time with the survey, it was just the web address to fill out the survey. That worked for us, but you need a little lead time to make signs. If you're going to just have an in-person meeting, I can, in my case, I can post information about the meeting date, time, and location. Anything works, you're just going to have to let us know.
Well, and to that point, certainly, Sue, the neighborhood associations, we're going to rely on them to kind of give us the idea of what would be the best way to get the information to their residents. So we'll work with those neighborhood associations. We've got Facebook and those kinds of platforms that we can use from a public perspective. So we'll like I say, we'll get the word out as best we can and go from there.
Thank you. So we have concluded discussion. It's not a vote per se, but I think everyone's in agreement about what the final discussion points were here that Rob.
Yes, this
okay.
has been very valuable. I appreciate all the comments, and generally I think we're really close, but I appreciate all the feedback. So
we could take a vote just for support of this version of the plan with a somewhat incorporation of our comments here, if we want to.
Did I hear Scott say sure?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yep.
Okay.
Since it's in our action items.
All right. So would you like Patrick to create a statement?
I'll move approval of this version of the Stoner Prairie Park Planning update with the inclusion of our comments to be considered, and for the consultant and staff to continue working on this. And I guess I will throw in to find some way to allow some kind of 5 neighborhood comment into this without this going wild from neighborhood comments.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. Those in favor of our statement, our motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that carries. And Rob, thank you so much
Yes,
for your
yeah.
time.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
evening.
Okay. So are we on 5B, the proposed 2023 operating budget? Scott?
Yes, am I
Okay.
back to, do I have the control of the screen? I'm not getting up there. This one? Thank you, Chris. Here it is. Okay, I'm back in control, or not control, but I'm running the PowerPoint. What I did, proposed 2023 operating budget, what I included in your packet, which is, I believe is on page 20. This was the information that I provided to the Park Commission last month, and the highlighted items are the ones that's. Oh, like that. Thanks, Scott. In what I've done is I've highlighted the things that I have incorporated into the operating budget. We were given direction from the mayor that we were only to add two staff. So staff's recommendation was to add the 2 summer staff for the Southdale Park to do some summer programming there. We did continue to add these contractual services for the security cameras, along with continued improvements to the outfield fences at McGaw. And I did still include the $5,000 for the CDL training in item 325. I included in the operating budget, we have the hub that is going to be coming up. I do have a brief update on the hub with the contract being revised and those kinds of things. Certainly in 2023, we're not going to have a full year of operation. So in this 25% might be optimistic. We may not have any operating expenses beyond utilities at the end of 2023, but I did want to include 25% of that proposed operating budget in case we would be open that last quarter of the year. So that's included. And then what I did is I actually went through the expenditure detail of each of the departments. And recreation, we haven't changed anything. I did. Chad is interested in with the community center, the idea of beginning to start to, I guess, phase out or even to get some additional skinnier tables for the community center for meetings and those kinds of things. But certainly the tables are beginning to start to get wore out. So we've got some dollars in there for additional tables. And then, yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
So what community center? The senior center?
This community center.
And why those tables come from the park budget?
Well,
Why they don't come from the senior center budget?
well, if you recall the history of it, Julia, we used to have a community center budget, and that used to be housed within us, but, you know, there's dollars that are being taken out, so Chad, you know, certainly wanted to include it in here, just to identify that we need to begin to start to, and certainly the council can take it up as a whole type of thing, but we wanted to just recognize that some of these tables are getting wore out, and the chairs, and then actually they have a lot of meetings in there, training meetings and things like that. So the idea of getting skinnier tables instead of the typical 6-foot tables that are pretty wide, where it's more of a skinnier conference type of table. So that's why we've included it in.
Number?
What? 355, yeah. It's $4,800 to be added. So what I've done is I've included the expenditure detail, and wherever I changed it from 2022 to 2023, then I made myself a note. So for example here, so that was the recreation. Now we'll begin with the parks operational budget. So in 2023, in line item 289, that's for the Nine Springs Golf Course. So we need to increase that by $1,000 because that's what the contract is. Then here is where we put in the security cameras and the fence repair, as we indicated in the memo. And then also with resolution R7721 and R7821, those were the 2 3-year contracts that we signed for the median landscape maintenance and then the median mowing. So that goes from $72,500 to the $74,250, which was approved in that 3-year contract. So I wanted to make note of that. Here is the town of Madison. You know, we're going to be taking additional medians on Rimrock, but we're thinking that we're going to be able to absorb those. We have within the contract, there's areas that we add so many square feet. There's a price per square foot. So we're thinking that we're going to be able to absorb those 6 additional medians in this proposed $94,250. I did, though, include additional removal for large trees of $1,500. You can see it's $3,500 currently, maintenance and removal of larger street trees. What I did, because of the addition of the town of Madison, I added $1,500 to that, so it's $5,000. And then also replacement of dead trees, I added $1,000. So instead of the 4, it would be 5,000. Well, then here I included the resolutions that indicated the different costs for those 3-year contracts, just for your information. And then what I did here in 323, you know, they did approve that $900 for the additional public works person, so I just added that $900 to the $1,100 to come to $2,000. In 325, I added that CDL training of $5,000. And then in 340, because of Southdale Park, they have a porta potty there. So I needed to add some operating expenses for that porta potty. And same thing in, all these other, it's really with the inclusion of the town of Madison and the Southdale Park. So we've added $3,500 and $350 for Southdale in the town of Madison. We've added $1,000 just in general maintenance types of items. $3,500 in $360 for power and electricity and shelter repairs and those kinds of things. And then $1,000 in utilities, electric and power, those kinds of things. So I've included those. The town of Madison has been added. I did, as part of the recommendation to the council, is our fee structures. And what I did do is I added as you recall, with the hub, we're going to have 2 rooms. So if you have both rooms, we're going to do the same rental fee as a large room. But if you have just one room at the hub, we're going to use the same as a medium room. So those 2 rooms are going to fit right into our existing rental policy. I highlighted that. This, as you recall, with the shelter reservations, we kind of downsized. We had, if you remember, we had all these different categories. So this is what we did last year. So I kind of updated the sheet to be according to what we currently do. I did include in your agenda comments, I thought was kind of interesting. In 2020, the year of COVID, the shelter and athletic field rentals were about $9,700. Rec programming was about $21,000 that we brought in. In 2021, the shelter and athletic field rentals was $55,198, and the rec programming was $102,509. So that made a nice recovery. And then, as of June 30th in 2022, our athletic fields and rentals are, doing really good, and then the recreational programs are doing well. So I wanted to provide that information to you, just as part of the budget. I know I did include. I'll give you one guess, Park Commission, why I included. There's one in here that I know Mr. Cheney has always brought up every year. So it's the light rental. So Mr. Cheney, you let me see. Where do we? I don't even know where we have it. What page would that be, Patrick?
Page 30.
Page 30.
And also there's a related thing on page 31 for tennis court lights.
Okay. So what do we currently for prepped and lined lights? We charge $10 per night for adult softball to utilize the lights at McGaw. Okay.
While Scott types my name in over there to Sue.
Thank you.
I want to back up. I was looking at your memo actually on page 20, but then maybe it'd be easier to follow in particular items. I'll just throw in a rhetorical observation. On your memo on page 20, I saw the word yes penciled in on the top left, and I was sort of wondering if that was a subliminal message to us to just get us to approve this. But
No, that those were the ones that I was recommending from the memo that I gave you last month.
Okay, not
Right?
important. Not important anyway. Let's see here, you say 290, yeah, 290. Okay, on page 23 then, 290, you've got the increase from $5,000 to $10,000 for fence repair for the McGaw softball fields.
Mm-hmm.
That was never clear about whether this was one field or all 5 fields or 2 fields or whatever. I went out and looked at all the fences all the way around, kind of mapped them out myself, counted out where ties were broken, posts were broken loose and everything. I am still not in favor of $10,000 to, as I am more recently understanding this, take the fence off from the outside of the post and scrap it and put brand new fence on the inside of the posts. I'm thinking from some red flags that are out there, this is just one field for the north field. Am I on track for that? Do you know?
You are, but this will be an annual increase, so we'll do another field in future years.
Again, not in favor of this whole big retrofit of replacing the fence just to put the fence on the inside of the post. I can see the point. I still think, the fences are good enough. Those guys just slam into the fence when they want to catch the, almost home run ball. I would rather, again, see continuing repair of the fence, just use stronger wire ties, because the ties that are used on these kind of chain link fences are a soft aluminum wire. You can bend it easily in your hand. Get some stronger ties and tie them on and just use what's there, would be my opinion on this. And that would be a cost savings that could be used in some other places. I only saw, the worst of it, and what needs the most repair is the north field outfield fence. I have a question for you, Scott, to try and pin this down a little more. I was thinking about this as I walked around out there. If you were standing out there nearby and saw someone, let's say, just walk up to one of those baseball fences and give it a good swift kick and break the fence loose from the post, what would be your reaction? Would you say, oh, that's okay, don't worry about it, we'll just count this as routine maintenance to fix that fence, and we'll have the taxpayers pay for the repair of that? Or would you say, hey, you've got to either fix that yourself or pay for it? And so I'm wondering if this 10,000 or at least 5,000 or something or other like that, either the staff just keep repairing it, because unless you use stronger ties, they're going to break it again, or a surcharge to the adult softball league?
No, I would view that, certainly the softball group and the Little League groups are users of the facility.
I don't see 10-year-olds breaking the fence.
Well, and I think it really is, it comes down to a safety thing, and then in repair and maintenance to our facilities. It's really kind of as I see it, the cost of keeping our facilities usable and safe, and certainly I think a player or a softball player running into the fence is kind of part of the activity, if you would, and to punish or make them pay for something that was placed on the wrong side originally, I don't think that's
I can see in a 30-year hindsight, the fence could have been on the inside, but also slamming into the fence and the post has caused a lot of those posts to lean outwards. So again, I am not real in favor of this expenditure. I can see this escalating into a much bigger project, which might be more than the $10,000, even if it's just limited to that one north field, because the yellow cap has to come off the top. Some of it is already been pulled off because they like to jump over the top of a 6-foot fence to go after the ball. The post, then a lot of the posts are leaning outwards because they've been run into. Then, maybe straightening a bunch of posts. Then you take the chain link fence off of the outside, and apparently not in favor of this, but throwing that away and brand new fence on the inside, and then tying it all down again. If they do all of that, again, not in favor, but there's one center gate that goes out to the outside in this whole long line of outfield fence. Add 2 more gates so they don't have to jump over it to get to the ball, as long as they're pretty much retrofitting this whole fence. And I'm hoping this is limited to just the north field. And then the brand new fence, and then the caps have to be put on top. So this could escalate into a large project if you go ahead with this.
Well,
not in favor.
Well, and to your point, it is, we've got four fields out there, so it is going to be an annual operating expense to maintain the facilities that we have. And in this, again, as, staff, we provide the information to the Park Commission and what our recommendations are, and you certainly, have the ability to voice your opinion, which is, we appreciate that, but at the end of the day, it's really, it is up to the Park Commission as a group on how they feel about it. And
That's the point, yes.
yeah, so I guess to conclude, staff has looked at this, and our recommendation is to begin to start to repair and maintain the fences that we have at McGaw due to safety and being wore out, and that's what it's going to cost for the next 4 years. So.
Well, for safety, they could just not run into the fence. This was unclear about how many of the actual 5 fields, counting the youth field way to the north, that this includes. I mapped them all out on a piece of paper about what fences were inside of the posts and which ones are outside. Only the north and the west fields have fences that are outside of the post for the outfield. So I don't know if you're looking at just the one north field or any more than that. And then the south and the east fields, the fence is on the east, in the inside, so I don't see any problem with those. I don't know how many of this includes.
Well, in fairness, we've got a lot of athletic fields within the park facilities, so certainly we would and could use some of these dollars for other fence repairs.
Okay.
So it's really just kind of the cost of doing business and maintaining our facilities in a safe manner. So.
Okay, I'm hoping that then this is kept in control and restrained, and again, sort of a compromise in the middle. Just work on the north field fence with those other comments that I made, straighten the posts and put a couple more gates in and things like that while they're tearing the whole thing apart. And the other fields, the other 3 fields that are lighted are okay, I think. The youth field certainly is all okay. So.
Yeah, and again, we plan to hopefully, if this goes through on an annual basis, to take one diamond each year and then get it up to speed and safe for the users of the field.
You talk about the 4 fields in McGaw?
4 fields in McGaw, yeah.
Okay, now I would be opposed to that. I think the north field is the only one that really needs the attention.
Okay, do we need to go in detail about this because it's almost 8 o'clock?
I want to go to another topic then,
and I think maybe you can have that conversation with Scott off the side, I don't know.
Yeah. And I see Heidi would like to make a remark, but I will quickly, just following up on Patrick's questions, if there's only 2 of the 4 adult fields that have the posts on the wrong side, then those are the only ones that will need that money put towards that repair. But if I think I'm hearing Scott correctly, he is also saying that given all the ball diamonds within the city park system, he wants a budget in there year after year to do whatever is necessary. Do I have that right, Scott?
Correct.
Yeah, and I see that point too. I want to go to what Scott mentioned about the lighting on the fields. I'm actually okay, as I said last year, with the $10 for the ball diamond lights. But I would like it more strongly encouraged that whoever is using the lights for those fields in McGaw, that they turn the lights off after their event is done. That would be a big savings and very helpful.
And I think we've got that message across to them for this year. That's for sure.
I hope so. By comparison, on the next page 31, again, I mentioned this last year, the tennis court lighting, it's a very uneven fee comparison. I would actually suggest that the tennis court lighting in McKee, since that says 2-hour time block per court, $10 and $20, which is the same $10 and $20 as used for the ball diamond lights in McGaw for the entire evening, and this is a 2-hour time block. I would kind of suggest lowering the tennis court light fee to $5 for resident and $10 for non-resident. And I'm also kind of wondering, does anyone ever pay that? Because all you got to do is walk up and push a button.
No, they just push a button.
Well, then I would kind of suggest lowering it to $5 and $10 and see if anybody voluntarily pays $5 to,
Well,
for their
but, yeah,
privilege.
we do, I should double check, but USTA sometimes does have a session from 8 to 10, and they're willing to pay the $10, so I would
Okay.
argue to keep,
All right, that's my suggestion. That's what I was thinking about. That's all.
Okay, Heidi, please go ahead.
Just one quick question. So with regards to absorbing the town of Madison Park, are there going to be any additional park funds or park revenues that may come to us to help us offset those costs?
Very minimal, Heidi. I know they do at Southdale have an open air shelter, and I believe they do rent that shelter. So there may be some minimal revenue brought in with the rental of that shelter.
Okay, did that answer any other questions? Okay, so do you want us to vote on the operating budget with taking comments into consideration? How are we proceeding here, Scott?
Yep, that would be a motion as proposed would be great. And I didn't really hear any opposition, but certainly if there's opposition to a certain piece, we could take a vote on that. And then at that point, if the Park Commission is good with it, then I'll submit this to the Finance Department for the Parks Department, Park and Rec actually, and Forestry.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the proposed 2023 operating budget.
All motion.
And a
I'll second.
second?
I have some questions. For Scott, can I ask those questions?
Please do.
How much is the total budget for the park? Because we don't see it here. But do you know that? And my other question is, for the 2021 and 2022 budget, do you use all the amount allocated to your department, or there is any?
We
Okay.
we use it. I can get for you. That'd be good information, Julia. Maybe a 5-year operating budget total, and I can share that with the Park Commission.
Yeah, it would be nice so people can see the
Sure.
whole picture.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Can you include the salaries?
That includes personnel.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can do that.
And my other question to you is, I know that we were talking about making Anna position full-time because of the town of Madison.
I'm not proposing that. No.
You're not proposing that?
No.
But then you had here adding a seasonal LTE to help Anna with forestry work.
Yep. And per the mayor's direction, we were allowed to add 2 staff.
Okay.
And I recommended that we add the 2 seasonal for Southdale, which is highlighted in yellow, and then the other one I didn't.
So each department will add 2 staff to the budget?
That was the direction of the mayor, yeah.
So we're going to have, because that one wasn't what he said the other day in Common Council meeting. He said that the budget only have room for 2 or 3 full-time people.
So he gave each department the latitude to add 2. So
And then he's going to choose.
they'll
3.
choose.
Okay.
So I had to
Okay.
kind of prioritize what I felt
Okay.
would be the best 2 for us at this.
Okay, now I want to. Okay, thank
These
you.
are seasonal LTE that you're adding, so that's not full-time, correct?
No, correct. But any.
Question on something that I don't think is a part of this, but I'll ask. The amplified sound permit, which I believe is still $60, is that not something that we review?
No, that's the clerk's department's budget.
Okay.
And I could, I know you're interested in that. I could find some annual information about that, because I know we have a lot of sound permits this year, so I can maybe find some dollar amounts for the last couple of years.
Okay, yes, I'd like to see that.
Okay, now we have the motion to approve the operating budget as proposed by our Parks Director. Is there a second? Or did I miss that there already was a second?
Second.
Okay, that's from Sarah Schroeder. Those in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. So we are at 5C, the resolution R 13522, adopting the 2023 to 32 capital improvement plan. And Scott, please go ahead.
In your information, the mayor's proposed CIP plan, and I don't know how much time you had to review that. A couple of the big things, what the mayor is proposing is to create an account that's going to be an annual replacement for the pickleball courts at McGaw and the tennis courts at McKee. So the idea that for the park system, the tennis courts are being provided at McKee and the pickleball courts are going to be provided at McGaw. And then the idea of all these other tennis courts that we have within the park system, if we're going, because we're having difficulty getting funding to maintain those, he said that if we could get fundraising or whatever it might be, that could be an option to try and receive funding for all of those other tennis courts within the community. And I don't know if you, in the interest of time, if you did have a chance to peruse through the CIP, and again, the big thing that you want to take a look at is what's proposed in 2023. I did make a note in the McKee Farms Park improvement for the Kids Crossing, that might be kind of a project that might initiate the idea of a Friends of Fitchburg Parks.
What does your note on the bottom say? Bottom right?
Can't you read that?
No.
A Friends of Fitchburg Park formation, ?
Oh, okay.
And then Southdale, we've got some improvements in 2023.
I have a question there, Scott.
Yep.
Okay. Two parts to the question. I'm seeing that to replace the park sign, it would be $5,000. And part one of my question is, thinking back to, you had encumbrances to the Stoner Prairie Park development. You said you had $1,950 encumbered for a sign. So why, do you recall the difference there? Why the others $1,950?
No, I think that's a good point, Sue. Maybe signs aren't $5,000 at this point. They might only be $2,000.
Okay.
And certainly all these dollars that we get in there, they continue we don't lose them.
Right.
So
okay. All right. The next part of that same question is just a thought for the future. Nothing that I don't see needs to be decided, but however much a park sign will cost for Southdale, I think we should find out about a process to rename the park, because it now will be in the northernmost boundary of the city of Fitchburg, and to have it remain named Southdale. I mean, this would be our chance to, have a contest, involve, if there are any associations there, involve them in choosing a name that, now they're not in the south part of the town of Madison, they're in the north part of Fitchburg. So that's a thought for the future. And then regardless of how much the signs cost, $2,000 to $5,000, less or more, an idea to think about would be, do we create the same type of sign for an area park or a community park as we do for a neighborhood park? A neighborhood park could be similar, but with the logo lopped off, and then it would cost. Or could it be even simpler than that? And because, for example, in Terra Vesa, there's going to be there's two parks that are distinct from each other already, not counting the ag park. So if they were in fact $5,000 each, it'd be $15,000 into signage for parks in one development. So it's just food for thought for the future. I know we can't solve this tonight.
Well, in fairness too, Sue, park improvement dollars can be utilized for those park signage for the new park. So that's additional information.
Okay, all right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And then.
Make a comment about that.
Yep.
Sure, go ahead.
I think we need to think about branding, so I really support the idea that we have our signing with our logo, because especially in town of Madison, because this is our branding, we are going there. So as a new, acquiring that part of the city, and I don't know, I think more like about we need to follow what CEDA and Forward Fitchburg created, the plan that is put in place where branding is, we had to have a standard branding for the whole city, so we need to follow that too, So there is a plan for that was put together by CEDA. So,
and really, what we do currently is the size of the sign. Certainly we include the branding, but if it's a area, community park or area park, the size of the sign might be would be proportionate to the type of park that it is.
I see, yeah. My only thought was, and I appreciate what I've just heard, that even if the logo isn't on a neighborhood park, or that pocket park on King James Way, it still says City of Fitchburg underneath the name of the park. But
we got to have the logo on there, yeah.
Okay.
We'd catch HE double hockey sticks if we didn't have it on there.
Send them to me. Okay. On we go.
62, 63.
Well, I want to ask about something here. Could you just give us a little background on why some of these, for example, 6211 McGaw Park was apparently turned into 6259, or this redivision of these numbers? What's the
well, that was really Misty and I and the mayor working in partnership. It really did kind of streamline it. So I wouldn't read too much into that, Patrick. I think it really did help give direction to the improvements and those kinds of things.
So it's a sort of a regrouping and in some cases dividing things up a little bit.
Exactly, and you can see as we roll through this, they did a lot of, for example, 62, 63. That's where Chicory, these are the tennis courts where funding force changes, either grants or donations, where because it's difficult to get, $150,000 or $160,000 to do a redo of a tennis court. So that's kind of a direction that the mayor has taken, which I appreciate. Here, 62, 64, we did receive some ARPA funding. So that's.
I actually want to ask about, if we're going to hit these things as we go through them, or.
Yeah.
Okay. In 6259, I know in the past, I kind of lost track of where it was, but somewhere there is a Hugel Jamestown drinking fountain being added. I don't know where that is anymore. But that, I believe, is approved?
Yep, that's in 2022, so we're doing that.
I remember 2022 this year.
Yep.
Okay, and then I had commented on getting the Belmar Hills drinking fountain back in. It was put in the past, and it was taken out in the past because of funding, and I had asked that it could be put back in, and I don't know what happened with that.
Oh, I put an amendment in the ARPA fund.
Well, that could be.
Is it?
Yeah, and I don't know if that made it. I don't think that made it.
I did it. I don't know where it is here.
Okay, well.
It was approved, but I don't know
if you can look into that wherever it went. With the new numbers here. I do want to comment on something on page 45, which is part of 6259.
45.
On page 45, the top line there, scheduled for 2024, new volleyball post $10,000 levy, that's property tax levy.
That's correct.
Moved from 6211. So, can I make an amendment?
No, wait. Let's go back. I'm going to explain the CIP. Okay? The CIP already was closed, the window to amendment, okay? It was July 5th. And the only thing that we need to care about here is what is going to affect the 2023 budget. Because everything, 24, 25, 26, this is a plan.
place.
Yeah.
everything we move in, we take things out to the plan. So what is important for us to look is everything related to parks that is going to hit the budget in 2023.
Okay.
The CIP process to include amendment is closed.
Okay.
It was July 5th.
And that was actually something I was thinking about. I thought, didn't we already do this in April? Okay.
And actually what happened, which is different, is the council did refer it back to the park commission. So what you're seeing now is what the mayor is proposing.
Okay.
And that still has to go through the amendment process from the council and all of those kinds of things. So this is just
So
kind of a informational thing for you guys.
So as Julia says, we're just looking at the budget now for the 2023 items.
No, but this is what happened. This meeting should have happened before July 5th. So next year, we need to schedule this better because now the idea was to bring this because I moved it to park because there are a lot of things in parks in the CIP, and we need to discuss. And the idea was to talk to you and I said, do you want to put an amendment? But then it came after they closed the deadline for the amendment. So
saw that,
we
yeah.
cannot do anything now, because
Okay.
And in fairness, to Julia's point, they're beginning to start to send stuff back to the park commission. What I did is I brought it to you because I needed to submit my CIP proposal. So that's what we did and what we've done traditionally since I've been here. This is the first time that the council decided to refer it back to the park commission. So we're going to have another crack at it in the future.
Okay, fine, go ahead.
But there is some changes as far as how it's organized and tennis pickleball courts, 6263. Again, we talked about alternate sources of funding.
I was wondering there, those two lines right there, 2046, McGall Pickleball Court Replacement, and 2047, McKee Farms Tennis Court Replacements. That's 25 years out.
That's how long they're supposed to last, right? Right. And what the mayor's strategy, the mayor's strategy is to put money every year, so when they're ready to be replaced, we've got the money in. So that's great. That's a good idea.
This is to accumulate money into there for 25 years from now.
It's not the mayor, it's Misty, the director of finance.
Well, that could be, yeah. They're in, the mayors are, so. And then 6264, we actually in 2023, we're going to be doing Tower Hill because we did receive some of that ARPA funding. So to Julia's point, that's on the schedule for 2023. And then another kind of a new one is 6266, which really kind of lines up all of our park projects, which is a great organizational addition on the regrouping that the mayor put together for us. And then there's the rec circuit and neighborhood hub phase 2. And what the mayor has done is because...
Which one are you on now?
I'm on page 54 of the packet. It's been moved back a year because hub phase 1 is moved back.
Just a couple questions here on page 50, 6266.
Page what?
Page 50, it is 6266. New park developments revised. The one thing here, scheduled for 2027,
Yeah, we're not, yeah.
Let's see here. Okay, no, never mind about that one.
Yeah, we're not, that's for another, that's for
2020,
another day.
there, down below here, 2022, Fahey Fields new playground and path lighting. The path lighting that was put in is this path lighting, right?
That's correct, that's
Okay,
correct.
all right.
Yep, that's a 2022 project.
I would again encourage you to be a little clearer on the name. There is no Fahey Fields. If you want to call it, as you did above, McGaw Park / Fahey Fields area or such, but there is no Fahey Fields Park.
Okay.
And in 2022 is also $5,000 for the new fountain by the pickleball courts.
Yeah, that's 2022, yep.
Right.
Yeah, that
And
one was passed.
That's-
does the
Let's look at
drinking
that's-
fountain itself cost the whole $5,000?
Well, actually, it costs more than
More
that.
than
But
that.
that's what we've got to work with.
Okay.
And again, well, then the teen center, and that's kind of in our house, if you would, at this point, but eventually it might be in a new department, if you would. Community tree gravel beds with ARPA funding, that's in 2025. Kids Crossing Playground. Julio was able to get some funding from ARPA in 2026, so that's one. Then I did include the ARPA and TID closure investment projects that we have as a water fountain at Hugo Jamestown in 2023, and then the McKee Farms Park, or 2022, and then the McKee Farms Park tennis court fencing and resurfacing. We're working on trying to get that done. Well, that's not going to happen until 2023 physically, but we're working to get it set up for 2023.
Which page has the Hugo Jamestown drinking fountain?
63. These are the requests that were approved by the council in resolution 9922 for ARPA and TID funding, and I just highlighted the park ones for you. And that's for 2022. Those are this year's projects.
I'm still not seeing Hugo Jamestown drinking
Yeah, it's
fountain.
there. It's in the blue section.
Well, it says water fountain at Hugo Jamestown Park.
Oh, you don't have a color. The first.
Oh,
the first one.
okay, there it is.
I highlight the yellow ones, the highlighted ones.
Okay. Mine's in black and white, so, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so
so
that's R13522.
yeah, and so really, we're not voting because there's no amendments are,
Well, no, I
Everything's-
would take action and vote on it, yep.
so we're looking for a motion to approve resolution R 135-22. Did I already get a motion in a second?
No,
I don't think we did.
no.
Sorry. A motion?
So
I'd
I
make a
move-
motion to approve.
Sarah?
Sarah Schroeder is making the motion, and the second was Julia?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
We're trying to get it going.
I submitted my amendments on Tuesday, and I had 2 amendments for parks. One is to add some shade structure in the splash pad in the east section. And then the other one is to add using park dedication fee, okay? Add open shelter, a small open shelter close to the inclusive playground. Because I have seen people with tent. They have tent because there is no, it's too sunny and there is no shade. So I saw the other day people with a small kid that they put tent. And this one said, oh, we need a shelter here, like an open. So those one are the 2, and I would like your support when we need to vote. The council need to vote for the amendment that you send. If you agree with this amendment, I would like the support from Parks Committee supporting those amendments when the times come. I'm going to send you an email when it's going to be the public hearing for that. But
You have a dollar amount that you're proposing?
I think for the shade, I know they cost $20,000 each, and then for the open space shelter, I use the amount that it came for the Stony Prairie. It's $170,000. I use the same dimension because I need to have a reference. So and we have those numbers that they're updated. So I use those. So
What did you say,
70,000.
175,000? Is that a
But it's
gazebo, or
huh?
what kind of a structure are you thinking, a gazebo, or?
No, it was the
same,
same one that was identified in the Stoner Prairie Park plan.
the same-
It-
same dimension.
Rob had a cost estimate for it, so that's where Julia got the structure and the amount from.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And then the shade structure added to the splash pad, that's a single $20,000?
Each. Yeah, 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so I understand, you know, if those amendments are discussed, would the council then be expecting that we remove that same amount of money from some other part of the park's budget?
No, because I use, because it's a community park,
Oh,
I can
yes, of
use park
course.
dedication fees to fund those projects.
Yes, thank you for stating that. You actually said it initially and then I missed. Thank you. Okay, so we have voted.
Yep.
And we just had a little additional discussion. So now we are on our, we didn't have anything under specifically discussion and potential action. That's item 6. So we're into 7, communication. Take it away, Scott.
Yep, and I kind of alluded to it about the ARPA funding, which is what we're currently working on with 22 approved projects. The drinking fountain, R11522, that I did include in your packet the minutes from that meeting that did fail. It needed 6 votes to pass, and they only had 5. The talk on the street, though, is that there's going to be a couple alders who are going to sponsor a resolution to bring this back to the council, so there might be some future action on that. The Crescent Crossing park development, they're continuing to work on the developers agreement, and in Crescent Crossing, their team is working on the bidding documents to publicly bid both the tot lot and the dog park, or not dog park, the dog playground. Fish Hatchery Road update, I did include some comments in there. They are looking to do an amendment to the contract because the final scope was realized. We ran into a little bit of a snafu, but if all goes well, the Finance Committee did approve that amendment, but it will need to go to the Board of Public Works on the 18th of July and then go to the council for final approval on the 26th of July. An update on that. We actually had our first small-scale egg park team meeting today, which actually Rob was involved in it and rooted. So we'll have some additional information about that project as we continue on. One final item that I didn't include, but I did put on your chair is we are going to be doing a ribbon cutting for the Playground for All, the inclusive playground, on Sunday, July 24th at 4 o'clock. And I'm looking to send this out to everybody tomorrow, but Julia asked me to make some copies to kind of give you a prelude to that email that'll be coming tomorrow about that event. And that concludes my communication. Sue?
Okay, thanks. Now, we're into staff reports then, correct?
Correct.
All right. And they're all there for us to have read. I did not have any questions. Are there questions or comments about staff reports that anyone would like to make? I see Julia. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, my question to Scott is, who is now that updating the planned park? Because Wade is out, so we're waiting for the new community planner to do it, or
Correct.
you are planning to do it?
I wasn't.
Oh, you're not going to do it?
Nope. That's going to be one of the tasks of the new planner that comes in to help us finish that project.
Do you know what is the time frame for that?
Well, I believe they have a handful of applicants, and I think they've got some interviews set up for next week, actually. So hopefully that'll be moving quickly.
Okay, any other questions? So we can close out staff reports and updates. Future agenda items, Scott, have we anything specific?
Oh, I'm sure there'll be some stuff.
All right, well, think about then whether it's this next time or move to a subsequent month if next time ends up looking too busy, but for us to talk about renaming Southdale Park. So it doesn't have to be next month, but don't want it to fall off the radar either.
Oh, no, can I add another thing?
Sure.
The other amendment that I included, it was, there is a new project that is coming to the city as they're going to do the resurfacing of Irish Lane from Fish Hatchery to Sain Road, but they want to add bike lanes, and they're going to cost $2.8 million to add that. And my concern is they need to remove a lot of tree in the corridor. And then talking to Sue, she reminded me that that one is part of the Moraine Edge Park corridor. So I think that, I don't know if Public Works knew about that. I have maps. I send all my research in my CIP. That Sue helped me to find that information, and she shared some information because it's very concerning. I went there and I took pictures, and they are like heritage oaks, like huge. They are maybe 200-300, I don't know. And I look at the dimension, how close are the road, and if they need to add the bike path, bike lanes, all of these trees are gone, you know. So there's something that maybe we need to discuss in the future, and it's going to come up.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Irish there too, and the road as it is narrow, and it drops off right away to ditches. I know people in that area, people along Irish, and people in the Greenfield neighborhood that's close to where I live. So yeah, there's not a lot of room for either on-road bike lanes, not room for buffered bike lanes, not room for a multi-use path along there.
Yeah, and thank you, Julia, for bringing that up. I totally lost track of that in our discussions tonight. Yeah, unfortunately, all the big oak trees are in the ditches where the farmers couldn't get in to till. But they do have recurring problems with the condition of Irish Lane, but it's just a question of the whole idea of Moraine Edge Park, as I understand it, going there was for anyone traveling in that direction to make, or any build out of a Moraine Edge Park is to make use of those very large and stately oak trees and whatever other tree varieties in there might be worth saving. So ultimately, in a long term, you might be able to, there might be some way to suggest you could have a multi-use path down the road on the north side of the oak trees. And then for right now, simply just resurface the road at pretty much the width it is. But if you start to add those buffered bike lanes, 7 feet on each side, then the whole point of Moraine Edge Park, not the whole point, but most of the point of Moraine Edge Park is wiped out. And our idea of a 30% tree canopy is set back a long, long time. So thank you, Julia, for remembering, first of all, to put that in as an amendment,
Yeah,
and
we
for
should
mentioning it tonight.
we should definitely have that as a future agenda item. I mean,
Yeah.
rather than discussing it right now, but
Yeah. Let's put it on, whether it's this month or the following that makes sense. But so we are sort of revisiting for us what Moraine Edge Park is, and then it'll help us understand that. Okay. So we're on to 10, the announcements. August 4th and September 1st, 6 p.m. for our meetings. A motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
That's Chris.
Second.
Second? Julia seconds. Those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
I have 8:31.
Thank you
Bye,
very much
Sue.
for your. Bye. Thanks for your time,
Thanks.
everybody. Bye-bye.